The foundation for the plan is 3% growth. In fact, that is Trumponomics. People ask me, you're the budget director, what do you think about Trumponomics? Trumponomics is whatever can get us to 3% growth.
White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney this week unveiling the Trump administration's budget for 2018. The $4.1 trillion plan seeks to eliminate the deficit in 10 years while avoiding cuts to Medicare and Social Security. All this based on the premise that the U.S. economy will reach 3% growth by 2021. So is that a realistic goal? Let's ask economist Douglas Holtz Eakin. He's the president of the American Action Forum and former director of the Congressional Budget Office. So welcome, Doug. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So let's deal first with the 3% growth issue. Jason Furman, former White House economist under President Obama, wrote for us this week that you just can't really get there for any extended period anymore because population growth is too slow and there are too many structural barriers. What do you think of that?
I don't agree with that. I mean, a lot of the structural barriers were erected by Jason Furman and the president he served, Barack Obama. So if you got serious about tax reform, if you got serious about regulatory reform, if you had a sensible, targeted national infrastructure program that enhanced national connectivity and economic performance, and if you took off the table the potential that the U.S. itself would have a sovereign debt crisis by getting the budget put back to balance, as they promised, you could get the 3% growth. That's certainly within the reasonable bounds. 4 or 5, no, but 3 is a sensible number.
Well, but we had a 4% growth over extended period years in the Reagan years in the 1980s and the late 1990s. So why can't that happen again? Is that just because the population growth isn't going to be as great?
It's the population. I mean, the building blocks of growth are simple. You've got workers and productivity, and the growth in workers is slower now. Because of the demographics, and this is all about getting productivity growth back to where it should be. It's declined precipitously, and to do that, you need some ability to start businesses. We've seen business startups decline recently. You need capital investment, new technologies. There are lots of pieces that we know go into better productivity growth, and we simply haven't done those for a number of years.
Well, and if you look at Trumponomics, which Mulvaney mentioned, I mean, deregulation, that reduces the barriers to capital investment and business confidence. Then you have tax reform. If it's done right, and it's a big if, but if it's done right, you're going to reduce the taxation on corporate income and small business income, and then that's going to help investment. And those things both would drive greater business and worker productivity.
Sure. I mean, if you took, for example, the House proposed tax reform, that's a plan that, taken as a whole, would incentivize firms to invest, innovate, and grow in America as opposed to elsewhere. You'd get a one-time pop from a lot of money coming back to the U.S. You'd get sustained better investment incentives. You get better allocation of capital. You let markets do it, not the tax code. All of that can get you a 0.5 percentage point if you do that. Now, as you said, it's a big if, but remember, the president's budget is what will happen if the president gets everything he wants the way he wants it. So every president's budget is at some level an elaborate fantasy, but it tells you what the outer bounds are of good policy, and that's what they're trying to stake out.
All right, let's talk about the budget, some of the specifics in it. What's your biggest disappointment in the budget? I'll tell you mine. It's that there's no touching Medicare or Social Security, which takes a huge chunk of the budget off the table for any kind of fixes.
You've got it exactly right. That has to happen. We have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act. Those programs are driving the ever-rising spending that fuels the red ink. If you take those two off the table, you can't really make sensible adjustments to the rest of the budget that add up. And you see that in the fact that they don't really have the out-year defense money that they need because they haven't made room for it. And they don't really have a sensible strategy on cutting non-defense discretionary program. There's some massive cuts in places like National Institutes of Health, where it's probably not merited, but they need that to make the budget add up. That's a problem.
So what do you like about the budget? Is there anything you really think is useful that's in there that's much needed?
There is a Medicaid reform. We're going to have to reform all of our entitlement programs, and critics don't like this one, but they are missing the point. There has to be one. So if you don't like this one, propose another one that you like better, but don't take Medicaid reform off the table. So they're doing that. They're aiming for better growth. I think those are two big pluses in this budget.
And that Medicaid budget, the big reform is sending the program back to the states in the sense that you take more responsibility for it. And if you have more stakes in the game, the states, then reform it. And we've seen that in a lot of states. You know, because you were watching that program, a lot of states have done some very good things, Democrat and Republican governors, that get that program on a better footing and don't hurt the poor.
Yeah, I mean, there's no substitute for putting something on a budget. Once something's on a budget, and this puts it, gives it, this, it says, here's the money, they have every incentive to use that money more wisely. It's way better than an open-ended draw in the Treasury. And when we've done it in the past and given the states the flexibility, you look at Indiana, you look at Wisconsin, they have managed to cover those populations, get better health care, and not spend as much money. That's the key.
All right, general economic question here at the end. Why is the stock market doing so well here if there's so much uncertainty still in Washington about the Trump policies?
I think the number one thing is the fact that the regulatory freeze has really worked. I mean, Obama was cruising along at $3.2 billion a week in new regulatory costs, and now it's zero. And so people notice that. I mean, you know, if you're running a business, the beatings have stopped, and people are happy about that.
So you think that and if you got tax reform, it might be even better?
Yeah, I think the promise of tax reform is keeping people's hopes up. I sincerely hope the President and the Congress deliver. It's something this country needs.
All right, thank you very much, Doug Holtz Eakin.